Hello and welcome to the show. This is Trevor Crow. The show is Trevor and Friends. This is WGCH. Want to take a moment to think about the lives that were lost on October 7th, 2 years ago. It was a terrible, terrible situation that's led to an awful war. So just a moment to all of my friends and relatives who have been affected by this. Sitting next to me, which is delightful, I have Josh Elliott. He is a Democrat. He's a rep from District
88.
88. And Josh is doing something pretty admirable, and it's pretty incredible. I'm very excited about this because he is primarying Governor Ned Lamont. He is a Democrat. He's had years in politics helping to run his district. But first of all, Josh, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on October 7th.
Yeah, it is tragic. It was tragic. I'm Jewish. I'm part of the diaspora, and I would say my emotional attachment to this has changed over the last couple of years. And it's become more and more nuanced the more and more we find out what's happening with the fighting that's going on between Israel, between Palestine. And I have seen that there's almost this generational shift in terms of the way people feel about this. And I have come to a point where I believe that the death that we're seeing, the disproportionate amount of death is, I don't want to see the U.S. be a part of that. And I think that's too much of what we've seen.
I fully agree with you, and what's happened in Gaza is unconscionable. And I am hoping that Trump is going to be able to broker a deal, and Netanyahu is going to get on board. So it's an interesting process of what's happening overseas. But thank you for your thoughts. Now I'm going to go back to this David and Goliath story because Ned Lamont's been our governor for now 8 years. He's done what most people believe is a very good job. We recently got some poll numbers that I think surprised a lot of people. Are you aware of this poll, Josh?
Mm-hmm.
So people older than 65, I think 67% of them want to vote for Lamont in a third term should he choose to do so. Now, he hasn't definitively said he was running. However, each subsequent younger generations don't have a strong opinion about him or that he deserves to do this job a third term. So, Josh, tell me what your messaging is, what the demographic you're going after, and what's important to you and to them.
Sure. What I would make a quick note about in terms of polling, the first couple of years that Ned was our governor, he had very low polling numbers, and that was because of the failure of his administration to pass legislation that he was looking to do. And then COVID happened, and he became very popular because of people's seeing how he dealt with that. And so, at best, polling is a cross-section in time, and things can change very dramatically. The reason that I'm running is I'm frustrated dramatically by a couple things, and I'm focusing this campaign on, one, on affordability, and two, on how are we combating fascism that's coming into our state. In terms of affordability, what I'm fearful of is that we are going to take the wrong lessons from the Mamdani campaign and then use affordability as just a word and with no action behind it. The fact is that we undertax our wealthy and we overtax working families in our state. And then in terms of fascism, the thing I would point to is look at what happened after the Charlie Kirk murder, which was terrible. Mm-hmm. It was a political assassination. A month before that, there was another political assassination. And how did Connecticut respond? Well, when Melissa Hortman was murdered, we did nothing with our flags. And when Kirk was murdered, we held them at half-staff for 5 days. And that was because Trump dictated that states should do it. But who defied that? New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. Who did not? We did not. And I think that sends the wrong message from state government.
I love that. And I'm still shocked we didn't lower our flags for Melissa Hortman, her husband, and their dog.
Yes,
Gilbert.
That's right.
So makes me so sad. So anyway, back to this affordability and the messaging from Mamdani, which, believe me, that name alone raises hackles around here, as you can imagine. Sure. So talk to me about what your takeaway is, what you would do better, and what your messaging is going to focus on then.
So what Mamdani really focused on was a few very specific policy points. He was talking about, grocery stores and food deserts. He was talking about taxing the wealthy. And if you talk about affordability here in Connecticut, what are we talking about? Okay, well, we can talk about food. There's very limited amount amount that Connecticut as a state can do about food. We can talk about transportation. Well, we can invest more in our shoreline metroway to make sure that it's easier and faster and more affordable to get to the city, where, of course, we have a lot of our base here in Connecticut. You can talk about energy, and you can talk about investing in renewable future. You can talk about housing, and, of course, the governor vetoed that housing bill, which would have created more housing stock in Connecticut, because if you build more, housing costs are going to come down. But you can also talk about how we tax and who we tax. And we have three main taxes here in Connecticut: property tax, income tax, and the sales tax. Property tax, sales tax, highly regressive. They really, really harm the middle class, working families. And here's the statistic that I tell people over and over and over. The top 4,500 earners in our state are paying no more than 8% of their income to state and local taxes.
Oh my
the bottom
goodness.
1.2 million income earners are paying at minimum 20%. So the easiest, clearest, most direct way to help working families is to ask the wealthy to pay in more and to give these rebates back to working families, because right now what we're doing is we're subsidizing the wealthy in our state.
So you do know you're sitting in Greenwich right now, Greenwich,
correct.
Connecticut,
That
which
is
I
correct.
believe we have at least 10 billionaires, maybe more, in the town of Greenwich. Is that correct? So are you saying to me that you're going to say to these billionaires, you need to pay in more for the state to support working families, childcare, housing, food, etc.? You think these people actually should be paying more?
My belief is that if a working family can pay 20% of their income to state and local taxes, then certainly a billionaire can. Now, the argument is always that they're going to leave. If you look at long-term statistical analysis, people do not leave and come into a state based on state taxes. They're more likely to leave or come into a state based on where their grandchildren are. So my belief is that we're not going to demonize the wealthy. We're going to say, hey, here are the things we need to focus on for affordability, building out a middle class, building out a purchasing base, and making sure that we have high quality of life here in Connecticut.
I'm telling you right now, I agree with you. I also believe that if you made $1 billion, okay, it's great if you inherited kudos, wonderful. But if you made $1 billion here, which is what we're great at as a country, is you're afforded an amazing amount of resources, good roads, safety, people who are well educated. I believe if you've made $1 billion through your companies, etc., your responsibility to the community is clear.
Yep.
And when I hear people like Jeff Bezos moving from Oregon or wherever he was, Seattle, I can't remember. Anyway, he lives in Miami, to dodge $600 million a year in taxes. I'm like, come on, you're worth $200 billion?
Here's what happens. It's a matter of anecdote. It's a matter of who is talking to our elected officials. It's always the people with access. It's never the people without access. We have this fixation on, what's going to happen if the wealthy leaves? And so that's what we pay attention to. That's what the news articles are about. What we don't pay attention to is, A, the people that move into our state, and the year over year, the person making $100 million who makes $200 million the next year. Over the course of time, we get way more revenue than we would lose by increasing those tax rates. And I'm not talking about increasing it 20, 30, 40%. I'm talking about percentage points. If you look to Massachusetts in 2022, they have put a 4% surcharge on people making $1 million or more. What have we seen in the wake of that over the last 3 years? We see free universal school meals. We see better teacher pay. We see smaller class sizes. And because of that, we see better outcomes for our kids. And the fact is that now, 3 years later, they have more millionaires and billionaires than they had before.
I love hearing that. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Greenwich Board of Estimate and Taxation cut out $4 million from our school budget. So not only do we not have free lunch here in Greenwich, one of the wealthiest enclaves on the planet, but a lot of kids had to be bused earlier because the budget was slashed so much. So this actually, you're speaking to a town who is very wealthy, but doesn't seem to really have the sort of focus on how do we really support the communities, the schools, etc. And I have lots of family in Massachusetts, and yes, the school systems there are fantastic. They bring in young people. Both my kids are living in Boston right now, and it's thriving. So there is a way to thread this needle. And again, I know that trying to sort of move away from Ned Lamont. Now, Lamont did veto a housing bill, right? I thought we were going to go into a special session, but I haven't heard anything since.
Special session is looking like it's going to be mid-November. There is potentially a deal cut, but the thing is, at any point in time, until language is okayed by everybody and we have a date set, anything can change, but we are getting closer, it looks like.
Okay, so how do you feel about this housing bill?
Well, I mean, we have an affordability crisis. And what I mean by that is, generally
Mm.
speaking, a decade ago, you would have 15,000 homes in the market in Connecticut. Now it's closer to 7,000 homes in the market.
Mm.
And we have a need for well over 100,000 units, maybe upwards of 150,000.
Well,
And if we're talking about who gets priced out, it's not the wealthy who get priced out, it's the working families who get
hmm
priced out. And my feeling is that if we aren't building, if we aren't providing more tools for developers to be able to build affordably without excessive regulations, then we're never going to get out of this crisis.
Mm-mm. So, how are you going to address the question of local control? Because that is a very important part in certainly this neighborhood. And as you know, I ran for District 36
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much the entire District 36 of we don't want to lose our ability to decide what is built in our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that, 830G, et cetera?
Yeah, so 830G is basically just saying that if you don't have over a certain percentage of affordable housing, that the developer can get around the local ordinances and the planning and zoning and basically appeal to the state to be able to build this project. And we see very often that local municipalities and cities will try to block certain projects. And there's going to be no perfect answer that will make everybody happy. But the fact is, if we stick with status quo and don't do anything, then we know we're not going to get out of this because that's how we've gotten to where we are. I think the
Mm-hmm.
biggest problem that people have is going to be about congestion, making sure that we have the resources like sewer and roadways and an education system that can support new people. And what we really did with our bill, the Housing Bill 5002 that came out of the legislature, is we provided a lot of carrot and not a lot of stick. And there was a lot of goal setting, but not a lot of mandates. And I think that there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
misinformation that was coming from very specific groups. And I wouldn't even say it was like Greenwich or Fairfield. It was very specific people that were in the Gold Coast that were putting a lot of misinformation out there. And the fact is that this was a very light touch bill, but it was
Mm-hmm.
being put
Mm-hmm.
out there as though it was very heavy handed. And my frustration is that if we can't even get a light touch bill through, we're going to have an impossible time getting something that was actually robust.
Yes, I understand. We do have to build housing. It is a huge problem. Our economy here is actually pretty robust. We've done better in growth, in better than the rest of the country, actually, in the first half of this year. But we still need housing. We need young people to be able to afford to come back here. My kids certainly cannot at this moment. So I would like to see this. I'd like to see it done well. And a thumbs up to you. Okay, sort of moving on to a different topic. One of the issues, of course, is what's happening with ICE. So I have a few questions for you. One is, what would happen if you're governor and Trump decided to send in a National Guard along with his ICE troops, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to one of our cities, whether it be Hartford or New Haven? What would your response be?
The first thing you have to do is be the moral adjudicator. And this is what we're seeing both in California and Illinois, Pritzker and Newsom. And they are being very vocal. And now you can make the argument that they're actually bringing ICE in, that they're bringing essentially the Gestapo in, and that they're incentivizing places like Texas with their National Guard, sending their troops in. Hey, first of all, this is unconstitutional, but I think that you need to continue being vocal. What I'm frustrated by with our governor is he's targeting our urban centers and saying, look at these black and brown mayors, look at these women mayors who are bringing this attention in, but he's not pointing to Newsom, he's not pointing to Pritzker, who are also doing the same thing. I think it's the responsibility of all Democratic representation across the board, we're talking about governors,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about mayors, to
Mm-hmm.
be speaking vocally against what's happening. Because what I think is more dangerous is that people are not paying attention to what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we are seeing Trump try to get the National Guard from Texas to go to Chicago, to go to cities in California,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially say that these are war zones. And of course they're not. This
They're
is
not.
Trump's people trying to say that left-leaning organizations are simply just protesters who are afraid, who are out there peaceably assembling, trying to get the military essentially to try to enforce crackdowns. And what we're seeing is it's affecting local economies, is we're seeing people being dragged off the street and being kidnapped. And again, not nearly enough people are paying attention. I think using the bully pulpit, all the Democrat governors working together, is how we're going to get through this okay, because my biggest fear is not having democracy at the end of this.
Oh, it's just it to me it's horrifying and very scary. Speaking of democratic states, we are getting punished by, I believe it's Russell Vought, canceling $5.9 million out of our Green New Deal billion, 5.9 billion.
I
I
don't know if
believe
maybe 5.9 billion
billion.
over
Yeah.
over the entire U.S.
Um, uh, how would you respond to that when all of a sudden we're losing monies that are directly helping or impacting uh, Connecticut state businesses, and this is going to really hurt them?
Connecticut is one of the wealthiest states in the country, and this country is the wealthiest it's ever been in the history of humanity. And my belief is that when we saw with this massive bill that was passed by the federal government that cut taxes on the ultra wealthy, where is that money going? It's going to Connecticut, but it's not going to Connecticut state tax coffers. It's going back to individual people. And my belief is that because Connecticut is one of the few states that sends more money back to the federal government than it receives, those tax cuts should be going right back into Connecticut to be investing in renewable energy, to be investing in our education system, to be investing in transportation. We should be asking the people that live here, our neighbors, to be helping weather the storm.
I agree. So the governor of Maine, I'm forgetting her name, but
Janet Mills.
she just said she wasn't going to send tax money back to the federal government. I
Mm-hmm.
think she's trying to look for a way to like change
Soft
paychecks.
secession.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a conversation that we need to be having in earnest. And the reason is if we aren't, we are essentially funding fascism. The more money we send back as we get these funding cuts, and it's going towards funding ICE and funding the deployment of National Guards into our urban centers as opposed to be protecting ourselves from outside, we have a constitutional crisis on our hands. I think we need to be using every tool in our toolbox to slow how quickly this takeover is happening. You know, the frog doesn't get cooked overnight. This is a step-by-step, drip-by-drip process. Installing loyalists, ignoring the courts, going after comedians and journalists, ensuring that our institutions of higher education aren't able to teach just simple science and simple fact-based messaging, and making sure that we have a really informed citizenry. We are seeing massive, slow, incremental destruction of our democratic norms and ideals.
So one of the things that concerns me, of course, is those words informed citizenship or citizenry. And one of the things that we just have lost a lot of is local journalists right here in Connecticut. And I think a fallout of that is the Diamantis trial that's just getting started. And it certainly points to corruption in Ned Lamont's government. And what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's 2 points there that you just made. First is local journalism, and we've seen over the course of the last couple of decades, it's about half of these local journalistic outfits are owned by, I believe it's Alden Media, which is a venture capital firm. And what ends up happening is that you have this mass sort of monopolization of information, and we saw it with Jimmy Kimmel, and we've seen it with Stephen Colbert. Of again these massive players consolidating power, and I have big concerns there about people having a really strong idea of what's happening locally.
Right.
That would be the first thing I would say. And now, what was the second part of the question? So I make sure I get to it.
Oh, the Diamantis trial.
Right.
How do you think that's going to impact any of this?
I mean, the fact is that Diamantis was basically at the Office of Personnel Management, Policy Management, and essentially sending money out and taking kickbacks. And the worst thing that can happen in Connecticut government is corruption and bribery and people not believing that government is doing good by them. Because it makes it harder for all of us who want to do a good job with government to be able to do a good job. The good thing is that he was caught. And I will say, from everything it seems, is that the governor acted on it as soon as he saw it. But I also know that there were red flags leading up to it. Of course, we're going to see throughout the course of this process if the governor gets called as a witness, which it looks like he's going to be, how much he knew ahead of time. It's hard to opine until then. If there's corruption, we in government root it out as quickly as we possibly can, and that goes for whether we're talking about elections, whether we're talking about people taking kickbacks, whether they're elected or not. We've seen some of that in the past, and we're potentially seeing some of that now. It's really, really important that we hold ourselves to a high standard.
We have to, absolutely. So if elected governor, what would you do to fight corruption within your administration?
I mean, some of it is you have to just have very good protections in place, and you have to, whether it's the use of state cars and state funds, and making sure that you have audits very frequently. There's the comptroller's office, which is meant to do these audits. A lot of this is very process based, but also it's people feeling comfortable to be able to talk to you, to be able to navigate these things as well. I mean, a lot of this is you require whistleblowers, and you need to make sure that you have really strong whistleblower protection, because sometimes things will go under the radar before you catch them.
Which leads me to my next question, which is, what have you done in your past? And I know you've been in government for a while. Gives you I guess, the tools, the skills to be governor of this state.
It's a combination of things. First of all, I'm a small business owner. I own a little natural food store with my mother in Hamden that she opened 30 years ago, and we've been running that together for the last 15 years. I am an attorney, having graduated from Quinnipiac University, which is why I represent Hamden, and I've worked my way through the political process from the outside, being a non-endorsed candidate, to winning my first primary 60-40. In my first race, I did push the sitting Speaker of the House out, having then also served as a chair of the Higher Education Committee. And now I'm Deputy Speaker, where I'm also chair of screening, which means that every bill that comes to the House comes through my committee. The good bills stay alive, the bad bills die. I'm also caucus co-chair, helping us reach a near high water mark of 102 Dems out of the 151. And I say those things because I have an understanding of the political process and how to make legislation move. I understand how to manage an organization, but I also understand how laws affect people and the ramifications of the work that we do.
Excellent. And okay, so we talked a little bit about, at the early part of this interview, about how you connect to younger voters, and we only have like a minute left. But just a reminder, I'm sitting here with Josh Elliott. He is a Democrat. He's going to be primarying Ned Lamont for governor to run against whoever's going to be our Republican governor candidate. So talk to me how you're going to connect to the younger voters, because it seems like they're the most up for grab, and what is the messaging?
So I've never really been a big believer of social media being key for these things, but now I'm a big believer it's key for these things. Some of it, yes, is New York City and Mamdani, but some of it is just the fact that we have 3.7 million or so people who live in Connecticut, and to be able to get to all of them, you need to be, yes, doing regular media like TV and radio, but you have to be in people's hands on their cell phones, and a lot of that is doing social media. And then it's a matter of working on college campuses, working with people who feel disaffected by the system, don't see how it affects them. But I think that there's a growing understanding of that the gerontocracy that's been running our country is not something that's actually amenable to being future thinking. It's usually about protecting status quo. And the fact is, if you want to change the world, if you want to change problems that you see, you need people that are going to have a stake over the next 40 or 50 years in our country and in our state. And so my belief is that this campaign is a campaign that can reach over to those people, but it can reach a varied array of people that would be on board this campaign as well.
Awesome. Love it. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show with us. We're wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you.
I believe in the democratic process. People should be primaried. And I agree. We need some young energy, young thoughts, and an approach to affordability. We have to change it up, everybody. So we're going to go to a station break. This is Trevor Crow, Trevor and Friends. You're listening to WGCH 1490 AM. We'll be right back.